stopped you and walked out and nobody stopped you, then that's probably not the type of arrest that we need to be doing. Like, this is not, they're saying, oh, our court dockets are going to be so full and whatever, but I think that's just basically the way that you can interpret that is like they have enough scalps and they're just not going to go after. I think they look at like Grandpa being arrested and stuff like this is creating a lot of anger, but all of it creates anger. The fact that a single person is being arrested for anything and Donald Trump is like meeting with Kevin McCarthy tomorrow at his Mar-a-Lago residence. It's like, what about these people rotting away? Oh, these are just expendable, but not a single word from Donald. Nothing. Not a word.
No, and not any action in the time he had as president either. And I think they're trying to walk a fine line. They're trying to do as much as they can, get as many arrests as they can, and not do, because there are probably thousands of people that they have on with facial recognition and photos of them. And I think there were like 700 plus targets the FBI identified in those posts on Twitter and on their site that they were doing. And you can guarantee they have more than 170 of those people arrested. But I think there is some concern about optics. I don't know who wants to be the optics cuck in Joe Biden's America FBI department, FBI administration. But, I mean, how would that look? And you're not getting much pushback from people. You're getting some pushback from actual people are incensed about these arrests that are taking place. And people are turning on Trump and very angry with everybody who they're now seeing set them up to be there and threw them into this wood chipper. How much more anger would you get if you amplified that by 5, by 10, and cast a wider dragnet?
Well, before we shift gears into Jonathan Greenblatt, I have more updates on Gamestonk. This is kind of funny. So first of all, this is a real tweet, and it's good. It's good. I mean, this is one of the reasons why I think like attacking AOC when the GOP does this is kind of gay. And, of course, AOC has her own set of problems. But just this one tweet is pretty good. She says, "Gotta admit, it's really something to see Wall Streeters with a long history of treating our economy as a casino complain about a message board of posters also treating the market as a casino." So that's pretty good. But this is even better. This is from CNBC.com. Guy, short sellers are down $91 billion in January as GameStop leads squeeze stocks they bet against. I love it, dude. I had not seen a total out there, but the system-backed money grabbers have lost $91 billion. It's projected they could lose up to $1 trillion before this is all done. This is the most powerful blow struck against the system since the entire movement began, and it's going into the hands of working-class and middle-class right-wing white boys on Reddit and 4chan. Probably some non-whites as well, but whatever. I think this is good. Yeah. I don't know if it's going to be $1 trillion in losses. But, look, I mean, where did I read? There was something else. It was like there are 20 million, I believe. Where did I see this? It was 20. I think there are 20 million. This is from earlier. I'm trying to find it. 20 million shares, I think, that are under Melvin that are on call, which is just, like, insane. I mean, it's just going to keep going up for the reasons that we talked about. But, yeah, it keeps going. Keeps going and going. But, yeah, Jonathan Greenblatt, he's saying find a way to arrest everybody. This is in an interview on CBS News. And, of course, you got to love the CBS News site because their headline reads, United States, oh, my God, fucking dude, now they're doing an ad on the phone. Oh, my God. Jesus Christ. Dude, it's just like I'm raped by Jewish news every time I open a browser. It's like pop up, close ad, enter. I mean, I know it's been that way for a while, but I've opened this page a couple times, and this is the first time this happened. But anyway, U.S. is moving into a dangerous phase as anti-Semitic incidents surge, group says. Why don't you say Greenblatt says or ADL says? Oh, I know, because you know that people will just ignore everything that's written in the article. It's just like group says. Why don't you say, what do you have to hide? You know, because the funny thing is the entirety of the article is this just slack-jawed surprise at anyone who would think that Jews have done anything wrong. But yet you guys won't even put ADL or Jonathan Greenblatt in the title. Just amazing. But, yeah, did you listen to this interview, James?
I have not. I'm reading this piece right now. People, many Jews, very upset.
Yeah, they're
very mad.
Very upset. Yeah, so this is 1.5 speed Jonathan Greenblatt. I have a couple timestamps here. Hopefully we'll get right to the point here, but here we go.
At the ADL, we run annual surveys of anti-Semitic attitudes. In our latest study, roughly 10% of Americans hold anti-Semitic beliefs. Now, what's good is that number is low. It's way down from when we started doing this work in the 1960s. But 10% of all Americans, that's more than 30 million people. And in recent years, we've seen the rise of QAnon. We've seen the spread of extremism. So it is troubling that we had incidents this past weekend in 8 or 9 state capitals. And it's alarming that an increasing number of Americans do believe, like some 70-plus million, that maybe this election wasn't legitimate. We've got our work cut out for us because we can't necessarily afford the luxury of saying it's just a small minority of people who hold these conspiratorial ideas. The issue is far too pervasive, so we've got to be very pointed and we've got to be relentless in pushing back on it.
Now, we've heard this before, and he tries to couch this with, it used to be a lot worse in the 1960s, but it's on the rise again. It's like, well, yeah, because now there's the internet, everybody has access to this stuff. You guys have put your grubby little fingers directly on the levers of power, and everybody sees what you're doing. You're caught in this catch-22 that we talk about all the time on this show, where people notice, you crack down on those people, then more people notice, and just over and over and over again the process goes. But the money shot here, I think, is at 7 minutes into this thing, and I really hope that this is exactly the right place.
But what really motivates them is hatred. And again, anti-Jewish hatred, oftentimes we describe anti-Semitism as the oldest hatred. So unfortunately, it wasn't surprising at all to see it on display at the Capitol.
So if I hear you right, and I know you're being careful and circumspect, but essentially what you're telling me is the spike, the surge in anti-Semitism corresponds with the Trump presidency.
There's no doubt, and the data demonstrates this empirically, that the spike in anti-Semitism corresponded with the Trump administration. Now, I'm optimistic that the Biden administration will take a very different tack. But what we really need to grasp here is that for decades and decades and decades, politicians on both sides of the aisle, Republicans and Democrats, have stood up against anti-Semitism and other forms of hate. What Trump did was really an aberration. We've never had a president like that.
So where to, and in terms of taking the specific actions that will increase a sense of, hey, we're better than this, and give people hope, what do you do?
Well, I think what we're going to need to combat this rise of anti-Semitism to kind of...
Yeah, how do you give people hope? Well, let's see what Greenblatt says.
...tackle this surge of hate is we're going to need not a whole-of-government approach, but a whole-of-society approach. Government has a critical role to play, and I'm optimistic that the Biden administration will identify, arrest, and prosecute to the fullest extent of the law, not just the people who were, terrorizing, our elected officials 2 weeks ago, but they'll also take this approach with any white supremacist or anyone who breaks the law, because they've really...
So hold on a second.
Yeah.
Yeah, you heard that, right? The Biden administration arrests anybody who is a white supremacist. Well, that's everybody, right? Everything.
That's 10% of America, Jonathan.
Oh no, it's a lot more than that. 10% of America.
By his own numbers.
By his own numbers. I mean, you can be white supremacist and not know about Jews, but 10% are like very woke on the Jewish question. But listen to this one more time, because you really have to hear like exactly what he says. It's just like mind-boggling.
Government has a critical role to play, and I'm optimistic that the Biden administration will identify, arrest, and prosecute to the fullest extent of the law, not just the people who were, terrorizing, our elected officials 2 weeks ago, but they'll also take this approach with any white supremacist or anyone who breaks the law, because they've...
Identify and arrest anyone, not just the people at the Capitol, any white supremacist and anyone who breaks the law. Not any white supremacist who breaks the law, any white supremacist and anyone who breaks the law.
Right.
And
those two are conflated.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's equating the two, equating being a white supremacist with that now being a crime.
Yeah. And he didn't misspeak. Like, this is exactly what he meant to say. He continues.
They've really had free reign in the last 4 years.
If you buy the concept that those who forget history are condemned to relive it, and you're aware of, Hitler in 23, well before coming to power.
23.
How much of your brain is given over to the possibility What we saw the 6th of January was just the beginning.
Well, it's interesting because the ADL is the oldest anti-hate group in the United States. We've been at this for more than 100 years. And we remember 1923. And we remember the 1930s. And I think in the last 4 years, you have seen an unmistakable surge of anti-Semitism in this country and hate. But what I would say to you is that what just happened is really, if you will, the end of the beginning. I think we're now moving into a dangerous new phase.
Oh, God.
And it's going to require government and business and civil society to work hand in hand, to lock arms, to push back on this surge of prejudice. It's not going to be easy, but we are.
Well, the surge of prejudice is anti-white hatred from Jews, from Jonathan Greenblatt, who sounds like a faggot, by the way, in this. Like his tone, like you can identify him as a Jew, but he also just sounds like a homosexual as he's talking. I don't know if he is. I'm not saying that to just, be like, the easy bigotry, the easy bigotry. But is there such thing as easy bigotry with like talking about Jews? I don't think so. But the fact that the way we need the whole of society, we need everyone pushing back on this. It's like, well, if you're talking about Jewish supremacy, then yes, we need literally everyone in the society saying fuck you. And oh, by the way, Jonathan, all of your, Jewish hedge fund managers that are losing money hand over fist today, that's all of society pushing back arm in arm and saying fuck you and pushing it back against the bigotry. So I guess Greenblatt's getting what he's asking for, right, James? I mean, he's just kidding. He's getting everything he wants.
Easy, but we are doomed to repeat, the past if we don't learn from it and apply those lessons to the present and the future.
And to people who say...
Yeah, and it's like, well, those who do not learn the lessons of the past are doomed to repeat it. Well, that's true. Jews are merely continuing what they were doing prior to Nazi Germany. Jews are always doing the same thing, except that they've never gotten to the point where they are now. And so that's why they're very concerned about anti-Semitism. They have so much at stake, so much on the line. They've lost this so many times before, and they're the ones not learning the lesson. It's like, how about you just not go out into the world and try to enslave every people that you live in? Just go back to Israel, go to the country that you now have, and leave everybody the fuck alone. And we'll sort out the rest some other time. But the fact that you're in here, in our country, and all of these Jews on TV telling, like the chutzpah, to tell people that this is market manipulation and that there is anti-Semitism. It's like, we don't like what you're doing, right? I mean, anti-Semitism, it's just like, I don't even know.
Yeah, what they call anti-Semitism is a recognition of the host population. Is the host population recognizing what is being done to them? And that's all.
It's like, well, you don't like being raped. You don't like having. It's like you don't like being raped. Well, you're an anti-Semite. It's like you don't like this. It's like,
you don't like a foreign entity controlling your news media, controlling your entertainment industry, your banking industry, your government. You don't like that. Then there's something wrong with you. No, there's nothing wrong with people. And this surge in anti-Semitism that he's talking about, this has happened as people have recognized and been able to find more information for themselves, to do more research, to have these blinders removed, and figure out more of the truth and research these things, and then recognize, the reason that I'm hearing about white privilege, or the reason that it's become so onerous and difficult to get a job as a white person in America is not just because of like nebulous market forces or the status of the Gregorian calendar. 2020 is not the problem. The problem is that we are living as a conquered people. We're living as a people that are subjects of an alien and hostile group that is toying with us. And so, the easy answer, again, just like with short-selling stocks, the easy answer to not get burned on shorts is to not do shorts, to not have novel financial instruments. Yeah. The easy answer to prevent anti-Semitism is stop causing it.
Yeah,
stop doing what you're doing.
If you're Harvey Weinstein, stop raping women and stop finding conservatives to back you up. Then you won't have to go find people to do that, run cover for you. But yeah, it would be one thing, I suppose, if as the argument goes from people like Nick Land, these people just have high IQ, therefore they should be in charge. Like, I reject that premise as well. But it would be one thing if there was an entity that had a high IQ and they asserted themselves as managers and they did a competent job of managing and they weren't destroying anything. They were creating things and making things better, and everybody was productive, and nobody, your television wasn't flooded with pornography and everything else. It would be nobody. I would reject that premise anyway. Like, I want to lead myself. That's just a fundamental human right. But it would be one thing if they were in control and there were no bad outcomes. But everything's a fucking bad outcome. Everything is. Everything that they do is an outcome that accrues to their benefit and to your detriment. And that's the problem. And they deny that they're even in power. And then they deny that the outcome. And when you complain, when you have the audacity to complain about a bad outcome, you're an anti-Semite. And according to Jonathan Greenblatt, you have to be identified and rounded up and arrested just for existing. So who's the one? Who's the one with the irrational fear of people who aren't like them, Jonathan? Who is it? It's you. These are the most fragile people on the planet, and they have to erect these systems through very complex systems of blackmail and bribes and theft and everything else. And it's like, guy, if you're worried, don't build a fucking house of cards in a windstorm. If that's what you're worried about, go build your house of cards somewhere else. Let us build our own. We were actually doing a great job of building civilizations until you came along and destroyed it. And then you try to say, Judeo-Christianity built Western. No, it didn't. We did. You didn't. You actually, I would actually argue that Western civilization probably could have been a hell of a lot greater if you weren't involved, if you weren't, gumming up the works every fucking step of the way. And now you're on TV.
How many millions of Western people wouldn't have died in frivolous, pointless wars on your behalf? Yeah. If it weren't for that injection of Judaic values. It reminds me of, have you ever lent somebody a tool? Like, you lend somebody a lawnmower or a leaf blower or something, and they give it back to you, and it's thrashed, or it's out of gas, or they didn't put two-stroke oil in it, or their blades are all broken off. When someone who doesn't have any ownership of something or real connection to something is in charge of managing it, they're almost never going to do as good of a job because they don't feel any connection with it. They don't feel any responsibility for it. And the same is true for a civilization. When you have an alien group, a group that doesn't have any connection by blood, by religion, by anything, to the rest of the population, they're not going to care about how it's treated. They will just see it as a tool that they can abuse and throw away when they're done. Well,
it's even beyond carelessness. Like, these people borrow your tool, and they're like, I'm going to make sure that James can never use this fucking weed whacker again. I'm going to fucking make sure that his yard and the edges of his lawn look like shit forever because I think that's funny. I look at James's house, and his yard looks like shit because of me. Like, that's the Jewish mentality. This vindictive, malignant, maniacal, just literally cancer. I mean, that's what it is. Like, it would be one thing if, your buddy, borrows a chainsaw and gets, bends the bar, gets the fucking chain jammed or whatever because he cuts the branch the wrong way. It's like you can look the other way. But these Jews aren't cutting the branch the wrong way. They're literally borrowing your chainsaw and then sawing off all your arms and legs and being like, oh, God, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Oh, did I do that? I'm just so clumsy because I'm Jewish.
Well, at this point, they're not even in the, pretending to be sorry phase. Even that is like an antiquated thing.
They're just all right, now give me your fucking neck. It's like one thing after the next. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, you don't want your legs cut off? Sounds like something Hitler would say.
But, yeah, let me address this just a wild-eyed, hate-filled conspiracy theory that Jews control every event, because he says that, too, in this audio. It's like an 8-minute interview. It's pretty rich, but we did the highlights. Arrest everyone. Hortler is going to come back, and we need to watch out for that, because that's a thing, I was talking to somebody about this. I think it was Alex. I don't want to put Alex on the spot, but Alex is telling me, if I were Joe Biden, I would deflate this balloon in a certain way, and I would, not fuck with all these people, and it would just go away. And I said to Alex that, well, Jews benefit from anti-Semitism. They want a certain amount of it around, and actually that's a lot of the motivation behind the jignats with Trump, and it's one of the reasons why Trump dabbled in this, is then the donations into Jewish philanthropy groups goes way up whenever they go out, so whenever you see Jonathan Greenblatt going out and talking about anti-Semitism and we have to arrest everyone, take him seriously. But also look at that as a massive, like, donation drive for the ADL, because that's what it is. Like, the donations go up in a huge way. And it's the same with, black issues, right? If the government suddenly started talking about black people as a problem that has been solved and everything's great, all of the money, all of the funding dries up, and very quickly people get Negro fatigue. They stop caring about blacks. It has to be a constant campaign that's in your face. And it's especially true for anti-Semitism. They have to talk, it's around every corner, and, oh, God, just the Shoah, and people are going to die. And if you let these people go long enough, they're going to build electric floors everywhere. It's so bad. So they can't ever solve the problem of white supremacy. Like, they actually benefit to a certain degree of it being there. But they don't like it when it eclipses them, and that's, I kind of think, in the position where they're kind of in now. Because they'll lie and they'll say, anti-Semitism's still here, and even if they've arrested everyone, they'll still say anti-Semitism's here, and they'll be talking about just people who are like, I don't know, Mitt Romney will become the raging anti-Semite at that point, probably. But this whole, like, notion that this is a conspiracy theory, this, like, wild-eyed, hate-filled conspiracy theory, it's like, guy, I'm sorry, Greenblatt, guy, 40% of Biden's cabinet is Jewish. Nearly all of Trump's grandchildren and all of Joe Biden's grandchildren are Jewish. His children are all married to Jews, that most of Donald Trump's are. 50% of U.S. billionaires are Jewish. 30% of Forbes' top 100 richest are Jewish. Mark Zuckerberg, founder of Facebook. Larry Ellison, founder of Oracle. Sergey Brin and Larry Page, co-founders of Google, co-founders of Google, all Jewish. 46% of Jews earn more than $100,000 a year on paper. And I say on paper because, that's what they submit to the IRS. We know they probably are making much more under the table, compared with 18% of the overall population. So get that. 46% of Jews make six figures, make six-sided figures, and only 18% of the general population do. 131,000 millionaires live in Israel. Jewish Larry Fink controls $8 trillion in assets under management. The 5 largest philanthropic donations in the U.S. have been by Jews to religious institutions, have been by Jews to Jews, and George Carfunkel's Kodak grift is the number one. As of last year, it's now taken the number one spot. And so if there's nothing to hide, James, then why, when you make the movie Wall Street, does Evan Boyski get portrayed as Goy Gordon Gekko? Why does Bud Fox portray Michael Ovitz, right? Why do you have to do that? If there's nothing going on there, why don't you just portray Ivan as the Jewish risk arbitrager instead of Gordon Gekko? Now, Michael Douglas is Jewish, but just to be fair. But even Bud Fox, they portray him as this, like, blue-collar worker. But in real life, the guy that was Bud Fox in the real story of Ivan Boyski playing this Gordon Gekko, it was Michael Ovitz. So it's just like, come on, man. Like, nobody buys into this shit. And everything, it's right in front of people. Like Bloomberg, U.S. suffers sharpest rise in poverty rate in more than 50 years. Economic Times, world stands to witness great rise in inequality since record-keeping began. Extreme inequality, extreme poverty. I mean, guy, like, who's doing this? Like I said, this country, this planet, we don't have a Presbyterian problem. We also don't have a global warming problem. We have a Jewish problem. And it doesn't seem to be getting solved. These people just keep, the richer they get, the bigger the coon piles get, the more malicious things become. One day they're borrowing your power tools and returning them in shitty condition, and the next day they're using them to chop you into little pieces. I mean, that's kind of how that is. It's like you have to deal with these problems when they're small, and now they're very big, and they keep getting bigger.
Yeah, and I would wonder if they, at any point, they're going to drop that line about anti-Semitism being the world's oldest hatred, or that this is something that's been a problem for thousands of years. Because I remember hearing that before I knew these things, before I knew what I know now, and thinking, oh, that's interesting. World's oldest hatred. Okay, whatever. But if you really think about that, and it's hard to put yourself in the mind of someone who hasn't thought about these issues a great deal. What impression do people get when they hear someone like Jonathan Greenblatt say that anti-Semitism is the world's oldest hatred. I think a lot of people will think, oh, wow, that's horrible and terrible. A lot of people won't care. But a lot of people...
I've used this with talking to boomers.
Right.
Whenever Jews come up, I'm like, well, they say it's like the oldest, form of prejudice on the planet. Like, why do you think that is? What do you think's going on there? What
was
happened?
Everybody else wrong?
Yeah, it's like and then if you're really good with the history, you can just go down the whole list of 110 or 109 and just be like, well, so what happened to these people? Were they bigots? Were these people bigots? Were the Egyptians bigots? Or was Jesus a bigot? Like, do you just, and I don't like invoking the Jesus thing, but for obvious, for a lot of reasons. But it's one of the, throwing the moneylenders out, the Pharisees. Like, you can just go on down the line. Was Titus a bigot? Like, was Pope Innocent a bigot? Like, how many, where do we go? Like, so if everybody... as the saying goes, like if it walks like a duck, talks like a duck, you don't need to check its ass for feathers. I probably screwed that up, but it doesn't matter. I think people get the point. It's like,
well, their answer to that would be a sideways-facing, large-nosed Wojak saying yes. They all were bigots, and they were a problem. But I mean, when you think about, and this is difficult for people whose history education begins in 1964, or maybe it begins in 1942 with Holocaust lessons and then civil rights lessons, and then, or actually it probably starts with genocide of the Indians. But point being that people who don't have even a cursory understanding of history or just how long civilization has existed for, and how this time we're living in now, this 20th century up until this point, is a very small portion of that total time frame. You have to ask yourself, was everybody else over thousands of years, they were wrong? Okay, so that's interesting. So all of these people in history were wrong, but we have achieved enlightenment in the last 110, 60 years? Well, maybe that's, or is that the case? Or have we, as a society, with the guidance and with the compulsion of this outside minority, or have we deviated from the shot? Are we wrong? Are we misguided?
Yeah. Sorry, I was distracted by the hedge fund cries out in pain as it shorts you. Sorry. Totally off topic. Yeah, it's good. It's good. Yeah, this just keeps pouring in. And today was Holocaust Remembrance Day, too. So, Jews lose $91 billion.
Isn't that just like every day?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, never forgetty, right? Just one time after another. And, you look at who's getting rich and who's getting poorer. Who's climbing these Forbes top 100 lists? Who's falling off? Who's in charge of these things? I mean, they're even blaming the deaths of despair and overdoses from coronavirus. They're saying it's because people got too much unemployment and they had too much money and too much time on their hands, so they shot dope. Right? I mean, that's the new Jewish meme now. It's like, let's go.
Oh, that's what that's what I do. You find a $20 bill in the ground, and your instant thought is like, all right, black tar time.
Yeah. Well,
get the fuck out of here.
When your entire town has been totally decimated by Jewish hedge fund shorters, and you have nothing left, and you get some unemployment, and there's no hope of new employment, and your town is flooded with black tar. Yeah, it's what people do. And a lot of people are dead, and these people are now just saying, oh, yeah, we gave them too much unemployment, and maybe they would have died quicker. It's basically the shot. And so, yeah, just this whole string of just rebutting this anti-Semitism is just a myth, and it's not there. It's like, okay, well, then what about the deal that the Trump administration cut with Purdue Pharma and the Sackler family to ensure that they got off with very few fines, no criminal charges, and they get to keep all their money, as they shifted the money out of Purdue Pharma into their personal accounts so that it wouldn't be subject to civil penalties. What about that? Is that what is that? What's going on there? And what if that was white people and the victims of OxyContin were Jews? What would Jonathan Greenblatt be saying then? What would he be saying then, I wonder? And then you have news just from this week. Disney, which is a Jewish-controlled company. Is it Michael Eisner or Bob Iger? I think it's Bob Iger that's in charge there. In any case, since Walt Disney, it's been one Jew after another Jew. Because they did I don't know if people know this or not, but Jews did a hostile takeover of Disney in the 1980s. Like, it was one of the Reagan financialization of the economy bits, and they basically just stole it from the Disney brothers. And they made Roy like a board member, and then they just like fucked that guy. And it was like Mike Eisner and then Bob Iger. And yeah, so Disney's been laying off thousands of workers, and top execs, most of whom are Jewish, paid themselves $35 million in 2020. Isn't that neat how that works? How that do?
They just did such a good job.
Oh, they did a great job.
Yeah. It's the market forces.
They did a great job. They're giving themselves a bonus for screwing low-level workers. That's how it works. Like, Jews now give themselves bonuses for screwing people over. See, we are at the let me borrow your chainsaw, whoops, I cut off your arm, like, bit now. So then you have Mayorkas, Alejandro Mayorkas, the box-checking Hispanic appointee to DHS, who's actually Jewish, who's continuing on his pay-to-play scheme for the EB-5 visas. Yeah, he was at his confirmation hearing, and he's defending intervening to secure visas for rich foreign investors. Nobody says a word. He gets confirmed. No questions asked. You have Apollo CEO Leon Black. We've talked about him before. His dad is the guy who jumped off of the top of Pan Am and killed himself. Too bad Leon doesn't do the same thing. He's stepping down from Apollo, and it's because they did a review of his finances and found out that he's got a lot of deep connections to Jeffrey Epstein. But he just has to step down and hand the company to, oh no, James, another Jew. And, of course, the lawyer who is the chairman of the company that did the audit of Leon Black's financial dealings just said, oh, yeah, he had a financial relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, but all of this money, we promise, was only used for financial advice, which Leon Black made a lot of money doing. But, of course, if you look at Andrew J. Lavender, whatever. He's a Levantine, that's for sure. He's the guy that runs this Deckert, this company that did the audit of Apollo. And, I mean, you just go down the line with this guy. I mean, he represented the board of directors for Lehman Brothers in security actions following the financial crisis. He represented New Jersey Governor and MF Global CEO John Corzine in November 2011 for advice on matters related to that company's collapse. We all know the whole story behind that. He obtained a series of victories on behalf of New York real estate investor Reuben Schroen in a long-standing dispute regarding the ownership of a nursing home. This guy just goes on and on. He defends Bob Diamond, Barclays ex-CEO, amid allegations that the bank was involved in manipulating LIBOR benchmark interest rates, which is the bank. That's like the interest rate. The LIBOR is the interest rate that banks set in between themselves for lending each other money. And there was a fixing scheme by Bob Diamond. It's just like, holy fuck. And now he is representing Fox News in connection with multiple sexual harassment claims, including dismissal of claims brought by several different employees, including Andrea Tantaros. I wonder where she went. She was like one of the better-looking Fox News girls. Remember Andrea? She's gone now. I guess because she accused somebody of doing something shitty. Well, hopefully she's got a nest egg or something. She's steering clear of Josh Fox and the all the touching that's going on. But it's kind of funny. Like, all these people go right back to work, but like, what's Bill O'Reilly doing? Just wandering around his apartment in his bathrobe, like doing podcasts and commercials and stuff. Like, yeah, pays to be Jewish, I suppose.
Well, not hopefully, but how should I say this? I think Leon Black will have no problem landing on his feet.
Oh yeah, I mean, this guy's worth
a Deutsch
billions of dollars. Oh yeah, I get it. Yeah. I hope he, don't go up any tall building. Well, you should go check out, these, different tall buildings, Leon. Go check them out. But, I hope we get back. I hope we get back to the point where, like, his father, the reason why he committed suicide, jumped off Pan Am, is because he was so overwrought with, like, shame and, like, what would happen to him in, like, 1970s Gentile America. And so he just, like, jumped off the top of the building. Like, could we get back to that? Instead of this, like, fuck you, goy, we're going to fucking drown you and everybody's going to watch. Like, that's kind of where they're at now.
Well, yeah, and in terms of finances, like, Leon Black is not going to be punished financially for this. And odds are,
no.
Using what we know about these other fund managers, as a guide for what his trajectory is going to be.
Start a new company.
Exactly,
Yeah.
right. And he's probably going to get startup capital from Apollo.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, exactly. Mark Rowan. And, of course, we should always mention Leon Black, Mark Rowan, Apollo. These are very tight with Jared Kushner. You shouldn't be surprised, but these people are very tight with Jared. And Apollo's got a lot of connections to Donald Trump. And, of course, it's like, oh, Jeffrey Epstein's involved in this? So, of course. So, yeah, and then you have this, like, you know, people who want to deny anti-Semitism. Jonathan Greenblatt seems to be the only one who wants to deny it. And, you know, Jonathan Greenblatt accessories, like other people that do this. There's this article that I saw entitled, "In Japan, Jewish Domination is a Good Thing," says Professor. Well, that professor's Jewish. Professor Ben Ami Shaloni, a professor emeritus of Japanese history at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, has published a book about Jewish-Japanese ties and believes that the two peoples have developed a consciousness and feel uniqueness compared to other nations. And then he just goes on and on and on about the history. But the headline of the article makes it seem like it's a Japanese person in Japan saying that we love Jewish people, but it's a Jew who is, like, I guess maybe half Japanese saying Japan loves Jewish people and here's why. It's just like, okay, this is Jewish domination is a good thing. It's like, yeah, because you guys have had a really hard time cracking the Japan egg. There are like 2 Chabad houses in all of Japan, which is too many. But, yeah, it's kind of funny the way that they write about this. They've been trying to crack Japan for a while on the immigration stuff and for retribution for World War II. And there was something else I was going to say. Oh, yeah, about the Greenblatt thing. So, and it was something you were saying with, you know, the world's oldest bigotry and oldest prejudice, and it's been just such an ancient thing that's been with us since the planet was formed, all this stuff. It's like they would like to make that a meme about white people as well, but white people are generally very well liked by literally everybody else. Even black people, if they're not, like, reminded on a consistent basis by Jewish media to hate white people, they're usually, it's sort of like a natural relationship there that starts to form in terms of, like, hierarchy. And so, you know, and I know Tedious has talked about this, where people go to China, people go to Europe, or go to Asia, and, you know, you have people in all these cultures like India trying to whiten their skin. Like, whiteness is something that people aspire to be. And I think that's also seeped into the Jewish psyche as well. It's one of the reasons why Epstein was doing, like, breeding stumps with Gentile women, because they were trying to, and this is one of the reasons why Jews have like, intermarried with so many people as well, is that they don't like how they look. They look in the mirror. They know everybody sees what they see. They know that people see that image, that physiognomy, and then, like, make an about face and run away. Whereas white people, you know, we show up in the New World, and Native Americans, like, bow down to us on the sand, and in many cases they're just like, oh, you're just like our gods. Whereas, like, people see a Jew and they're like, oh, fuck, get this guy out of here. And it's just all of that sort of wrapped into this. It's true, and it's, you know, people think that white people are beautiful. We are the fairest race, and without Jews sort of there telling people to hate white people and white people are despicable, all the things that Jews do projecting onto whites, they're just telling you who they are, right? I know that sounds kind of basic, but all of the things that they talk about, I mean, we just did it with Greenblatt when he says, oh, this bigotry, everybody needs to stand up to it. It's like, yes, Jewish supremacy. It's not us. We're not doing it. This, like, white supremacist system that needs to be torn down. It's like, there's no white supremacist system in America. Hasn't been one for a long time.
Yeah, and you mentioned in the weekend show with Borzoi about the Ottoman Empire, which I just thought of this parallel between what you're saying about Epstein and what they were doing in the Ottomans, and the Ottomans importing these Slavic, these slaves from Eastern Europe, and essentially turning their bloodlines white over time. And it's, you know, this is something that Jews were involved in. Of course, they were the harem masters. They were the slave importers, the vast majority of them. And fast forward, hundreds of years later, and you see Jeffrey Epstein trying to repeat that same process.
Yeah, well, and now what they want to do is have this 9/11 style commission to probe the Capitol protests. I saw this news alert over the weekend. And, I was standing next to Mike when the news alert came in, and we both said the same thing to each other, which is, this is something that Jews want to do. So, because Mike was like, what did the headline say? I was like, well, it said support building for commission to investigate the Capitol riot, a 9/11 style commission. It's like, well, of course. This is what Jews put in headlines when they're trying to get other people to care about things. Because this is like when we talk about them putting choices in front of people and then people just choosing the things on the tray. This is, you see headline go out, we need 9/11 style commission to get to the bottom of the Capitol Hill protests. And in a split second, you have millions of people parroting that. People who would never have on their own said, if you thought there was a coup or an attempted coup or just an attack on our hallowed democracy, no pleb sitting out there is going to say, we need a commission, a blue ribbon panel commission to get to the bottom of everything that happened. And then there'd be like this grassroots movement that, springs up underneath that and gets it into, but the media leads. And then now you're going to have people online that do it. And then it's going to say, support building, grassroots movement wants commission to investigate Capitol riot. And, of course, we know how that's going to go. And you have, in tandem with that, DHS today, this is in the midst of, on Holocaust Remembrance Day, as Jews are losing money hand over fist, you have DHS issues new terror alert, warns that January 6th emboldened extremists. Now, of course, this is something that they've never done before. This type of domestic terror alert for white people specifically, and they're putting it in effect. I guess, James, they got rid of that stupid chart that Obama's first DHS secretary, I can't remember her name, big fat lesbian that went to become like the president of University of Arizona or something.
Napolitano.
Yeah, Napolitano. I was thinking like Shapiro. No, it's not Shapiro. It's Napolitano. I think it was under her when they got rid of the terror threat level that was put into place since 9/11 with like green, yellow, orange, red, pink, purple, black, and like it was usually on like red or orange. Yeah, it was just like, this is when you really have to start worrying about the state of Israel, and like we need to be very careful. Like we could have a terror attack at any time. They're just going to bring out a threat level, I think, for white people at this point, and it's just always going to be on fucking maximum, like purple. DHS is concerned these same drivers to violence will remain through early 2021 in some DVEs. Remember, this is the terminology that we talked about when we were talking about the Patriot Act. May be emboldened by the January 6th breach of the Capitol and decide to target elected officials in government facilities. So basically the FBI is going to tell us what they're going to do to gay out people, essentially, is targeting elected officials in government facilities. They're like, oh, these, because this is what they did with Arabs. They'd be like, oh, yeah, they're going to hijack planes, they're going to bomb this, they're going to bomb hotels, and then suddenly hotels get bombed, airplanes get hijacked, and then they're like, oh, we need to crack down on the Arabs for doing all this stuff. And the same sort of racism that they made okay against Muslims, they're doing with whites now. So when whites start committing attacks, then you can have when whites are sort of put into a position where they look like they're committing attacks, or they just are framed like protesting on the Capitol is now a terrorist act, right? So now they can say, oh yeah, and you make no mistake, all of this B-roll and the footage that they're putting out there of people wrapped in flags and everything else, the people on the other side of the Finkelthink equation, they literally hate these people. Like, they look at them, they hate them. They've been taught to do this. This has been in American media for years, hating ruralites, hating white people. It's in commercials and everything else. And they look at them and they absolutely hate them. And so just calling them terrorists is just really just barely an incremental acceleration at this point.
Yeah, well, and these people with Finkelthink, who they hate, these white people, the people they would think of as rednecks, simpletons, whatever, were whipped up and given hope by Trump over the last 4 years, and spent a lot of that time owning these libs, right? And under the pretense that Trump was their champion.
Right.
And so these people were flexing on libtards.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, waving the flag, and like just flexing on these people for
y'all ain't gonna fuck with
years.
us. We got Trump behind it. Oh, do you, bro? I mean, I'm sorry. I don't want to be too insensitive, but do you? Do you?
Right. Not only did you never have that, but also you definitely don't have it now. So nothing is coming to save you. And so these people have been like riled up over this period of time, and now that they sense they have the power and ability to just devastate these people. I mean, we've seen it already with, for example, like the kids turning in their parents for going to the protest. You know, this is welcome to Biden's America.
Well, and now you have people calling for not just a commission on the Capitol protest. It's like we're going to have a commission on people who went to mail a letter, basically. They want to do the Truth and Reconciliation Commission as well. This is something that was done in South Africa. And so, yeah, it's like, I mean, on what level of just Orwellian shithole totalitarian state are you on now? Right? I mean, it's just, yeah. And so, and then on top of that, with these commissions in full swing, and now we've talked about, and I know TDS has talked about, like the Jewish doctors that were in the Washington Post talking about how white people don't need to get the vaccine, white people don't need this and that, regardless of what you think about vax, anti-vax, like however you want to frame it. You have Oregon prioritizing vaccines over BIPOCs. Prioritizing vaccines for BIPOCs over those with chronic illness. Let's see, where is the money shot here? Let's see. The committee appears poised to prioritize allocation based on race, perhaps even ahead of those with chronic medical conditions. The Oregonian reports that when some members suggested prioritizing residents with relevant health conditions, a committee member representing a Native American group alleged that the committee was, quote, dealing with our own conditioning of white supremacy as it is showing up in our decision-making. Black? Yeah, right. Like saying that, hey, you know, I'm just going to go out on a limb here and saying that people who have chronic medical conditions who could die instantly from COVID, like 100% chance, they should get the vaccine first. And you have, like, some fucking, like, feather Indian stand up and be like, yeah, we're dealing with white supremacy here. We need to rethink our decision-making. It's like, yeah, that's where you're at. Black, indigenous, and other people of color, often abbreviated as BIPOC or BLAGAC, made the committee's tentative list, with their priority vis-a-vis regular Oregonians at risk from chronic medical conditions to be determined later. Yeah, it's going to be kind of funny. Now, somebody at the Cato Institute was like, yeah, you can't do this. This is going to run afoul of the Equal Protection Clause, the Constitution. No, it's not. They can do whatever they want. They'll do it. They'll do it first. Vaccines will be administered. Then there'll be a court suit, and then it will get dismissed. The end. Any other questions? That's how that's going to go. And you had Jews in the Washington Post laying the groundwork for this being perfectly acceptable. In fact, that's why they did it, because it's ultimately up to the states to decide who gets the vaccine and administering these things. So that was the Washington Post article where that Jew said, you know, white people should get it last, you know, black people should get it first, and older white people don't need it. I mean, that was just basically the permission slip for the states to behave in any way that they want. That's how they do it. That was the signal. That was the tell. So
right. Yeah, and this isn't even as much about the vaccine, although this is how they're introducing it. And it's a perfect vector to introduce this new framework for healthcare, where healthcare is prioritized for BIPOC first. Because there's a lot of white people that'll say, well, good, I don't want to get this vaccine. I don't trust the vaccine. And, you know, perfectly rational reasons for thinking that. And so they're not going to fight as hard for this as they would if this were, say, you know, heart surgery or blood transfusions. Right, because this is in the minds of many white people an elective procedure they don't want. So why do I care about this? Why does this matter? Well, it matters because they're going to, if they are able to do this, and this is what they're pushing forward on, is using this as the framework for triaging healthcare going forward. BIPOC gets it first, and you don't, ultimately.
Pretty much. I mean, that's what they want to do. And I mean, look, I mean, there may be some anti-vaxxers out there that are just like, well, this is great. But what is that? I mean, I don't want to get into the anti-vax vaccine debate, but like if vaccines were something that they were doing to like fuck with people, like if you're on like microchip in skin tier like
Bill
level.
Gates is killing Africans.
So why would they give it to Jews and blacks first? Like, I hate to be that kind of... I mean, that was almost a retard voice, but I like the slow down as well. It's like, wouldn't you think that they would come up with some reason why they just do first come, first serve, and then, get into the white people? It's like, oh, yeah, they're like... Because if you look at... I was listening to some news channel, I don't remember what it was, but Israel has vaccinated 38% of its population already, something like that, and they're in total lockdown, like no flights in or out or whatever. And it's kind of like the bleeding edge of like what the shot is with coronavirus. But not a single Palestinian. And the thing that they've done with that is they've said, well, there's some paperwork that Palestinians need to sign, and they haven't signed it yet. And the Palestinians are like, we haven't been given any paperwork. We don't need paperwork. We just want vaccines. And that's sort of like the stalemate where that goes. But vaccines are really bad, and they have microchips, and they want to put it in all the people's enemies, but they're not giving them to white people or Palestinians. It's like, okay, interesting. Not that I'm like going to be like knocking over tables and chairs to get a vaccine here, but it sort of just doesn't really jive with them.
Yeah, I don't want to make any pronouncements about that. I think people have reason to not want to get it, even if it's a reason as simple as like just not thinking you need it. Thinking, well, I'm young, I'm healthy, I don't have any risk for this. Yeah. So,
and I'm not saying people should go get it, but I'm just saying that the tea leaves have been read, and I don't see. I'm not saying that there's no reason not to get it, but it's just like if it's this nefarious thing that they're trying to use to control the population, it's kind of funny that they give it to themselves first. And I'm sure you could sort of argue, like, well, the batches that went to Israel do not have the... But Israel diverted a lot of batches that were intended elsewhere for people. And I'm guessing that Oregon is, like, really concerned about its black population just really needing to be controlled. Like, those people are just on the verge of total takeover of the country, and they just have to really rein them in. So, Yeah,
I like, too, that the Native American group is the one out demanding this. Like, wow, Native Americans suddenly showing a very acute interest in their health care. This is new.
An acute interest in white supremacy. It's like, that's not new, but it's like, bro,
this vaccine's made by Pfizer, not Listerine.
Yeah, we gave you all these nice reservations, guy. Like, we could have just fucking, like, wiped the floor with you, and then you wouldn't be doing any of this shit. But, oh, no! Our no good deed goes unpunished, does it? We do all these nice things, like, Abraham Lincoln frees the slaves, and, we have to free them, not send them back, and it's like, oh, yeah, let's keep them around. Oh, they come north. Oh, isn't that nice? It's like Native Americans have been radicalized against whites now, too. It's like, so. Anyway, that's it for today. We have a lot in the stack, a lot for the weekend. Something special coming up next week in the midweek. Look forward to that. Very special date. We're going to be honoring someone. So James has done a lot of work on that, so look forward to that. And, I don't think anything else. Enjoy the Shoah while it lasts.
Will we get to 100 billion? I think we'll get to 100 billion. Lost.
Yeah. Oh, we will. Maybe it's $1 trillion. I hope it's $1 trillion. But in any case, I think we have Jazz and Jesse tonight, and TD's Friday, and then FTN on the weekend. See you guys later.